first of all, don't even think about trying to compare the World Baseball Classic to the Team USA winning the gold medal of the Olympics. This is not the World Baseball Classic is not an Olympic event. There's no gold medal. It is what the World Baseball Classic is an enhanced exhibition tournament.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Johnny Montalbano. This is another edition of Moving the Goalpost. You can follow us across social media at MTGPETB. You can follow the Empty the Bench Network across social media at ETB Network. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick DiMart, Johnny at Montalbano NY. And you can watch all Empty the Bench shows on YouTube.com/ETB Network. And you can listen to Moving the Goalpost wherever you get your podcasts, and make sure to like and subscribe. Did I plug the network social media? Okay.
You got it all in.
Can't figure it out. Okay. So it's a really slow time in sports, and you know that when we lead off with hockey.
Well, not only hockey, Olympic hockey. Though.
Olympic hockey.
I mean, we just came off the Olympics, which was pretty amazing, pretty special for Team USA. They had, I think, the best Winter Olympics that they've ever had. But obviously, the two big things with them have been, I think the three biggest storylines with the Winter Olympics, at least from the Team USA side, and maybe even just talking about it in general, would be Lindsey Vonn, number one, what happened with her and all her, and the numerous surgeries that she's had, and number two and number three were the women's and the men's hockey team both winning gold in dramatic fashion. Yeah. So, you go ahead.
No, I didn't really watch either one because I slept through both of them. But look, the men haven't won in 46 years. So to me, it always seems like a really big deal whenever we beat countries like Canada or Russia. I know Canada's not really an adversary, but countries that are known for being better at hockey than we are, like whose number one sport is hockey, when we beat them, because we don't even care about hockey and we beat you at your best sport. So I know that's always a really big deal for us. And, then we're going to go back to not caring about hockey in a couple of weeks, but we're really pumped about this, about just beating Canada. Like, they're just sort of rivals to us, if that makes sense.
You're right. From a hockey perspective, it is, because hockey is Canada's number one sport, and they've been great at this for forever. And I think what's really amazing about all this with the U.S. is just the hype leading into the game on Sunday. First off, it went from a lot of people complaining about the fact that it was a Sunday morning, 8 o'clock face-off. People were going to be like, oh, now I got to go real early on a Sunday to watch this. Then it went from that to a lot of restaurants and bars and stuff were actually opening Sunday morning so people could go in and watch the game, which I thought was awesome to see. A lot of watch parties and everything else. You saw numerous videos if you were looking at social media of all these watch parties and stuff. And that, it's not only great for us, but even for the local businesses too. So there's a lot of great things to look at from there. And then you get to the game itself, which even from the ladies' side and from the guys' side, both of them were won in dramatic fashion. U.S. scored first. You had the Hallerbuck, the goaltender, make some unbelievable saves. There are pictures and still shots that, almost you could look at 50 years from now and see how amazing and how important those saves and those shots were. And U.S. ended up, getting to overtime. And I got off of work Sunday morning and I got home just in time, a minute right before overtime started. I was watching it throughout because, Sunday mornings are pretty easy for me. The hardest part is just getting up real early, especially off a Saturday night gig that I do. But it was amazing to watch the drama. And the one thing about Olympic hockey is overtimes are 3-on-3. Now in the NHL, they're 4-on-4, 5-on-5. They're 3-on-3 in the regular season, but 3-on-3 What's that?
In overtime?
Yeah. So they skate 3-on-3, and that opens up a lot of the ice. And the one thing, if you are a true hockey fan, which I'm not a diehard hockey fan. I mean, I am a fan. I'm a Ranger fan, and obviously we're not doing well, but that's a story for another show.
Well, one of the few actual Ranger fans in South Carolina.
Well, you have to remember, I'm a New Yorker. That's hence in my Twitter handle, Montalbano NY. The NY will always stand. As much as I've been down here now.
I mean, you don't need to specify it. We can figure it out. But.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, but just in case you're tuning in or listening for the very first time on this show. But yeah, so I forget what I was just saying. Okay, so I'm a pretty big hockey fan. I wouldn't say I'm a diehard, but I wouldn't say I don't watch the sport. But 3-on-3 hockey is much different than 4-on-4 or even full strength 5-on-5. But if you watch the game, Team Canada's the three guys they had out there right before the U.S. scored the game-winning goal were offensive players. So the one thing that you realize is on 3-on-3 is you have to almost play defense too.
Right.
And those three guys that Canada had out there were not real true defensive forwards. And the U.S. was able to take advantage of that and go down the ice and score the game-winning goal. And I say this really as a true sports fan. I think, and I say this like when it comes to the Stanley Cup, and this is maybe the most dramatic thing since the Stanley Cup and the most dramatic thing in hockey that we'll have until the playoffs start in April and go through May or June. But that moment was one of the most dramatic moments in hockey, and I think one of the best moments in U.S. hockey history. Because Canada seems to always be a better team than the U.S., and just the way they were able to do this is a historic moment for the U.S. Like you said, they had not won a gold medal in hockey in 46 years before this game, and just everything about it was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I didn't watch the game. Jack Hughes was the hero, the guy on the Devils.
Mm-hmm.
He was the hero of this game. Did you see the Sean Morash tweet?
Yeah, I did, and that's another thing you could look at here too.
I think like I'm not bringing up the tweet to shit on him. I'm bringing it up because it brings up an interesting discussion. Although I think me and you would probably agree. But basically, he was responding to a Chris Lepresti tweet about, and they're both Ranger fans. And yes. I don't know, hockey's a weird sport because it's like there's not a lot of hockey fans, but they tend to be the most passionate of all four major sports other than college football, I would say.
I would agree with you on that. Yeah.
But of all four professional sports, they're by far the smallest number, but also the most passionate. So Chris Lepresti tweeted, who's also a Ranger fan, "I've never loved Jack Hughes as much as I do right now," and the USA flag. And Sean Morash responds, like, "I'm sorry, this is my point. You're a Ranger fan. Be pumped as an American, no question. But loving Jack Hughes means you aren't a Ranger fan. Revoke your card, Chris."
Yeah,
I mean, okay, there's a few things. You can't be pumped as an American and not also love Jack Hughes a little bit in that moment because he's the one who scored the game-winning goal. Like, that's how it kind of works. You can't completely separate the player who scores a game-winning goal or is a huge part of the team winning and also not kind of be happy not be pretty happy with that player. That's ridiculous.
Okay, so that is being too diehard of a Ranger fan to say something like that. I'll give you a crazier situation. How do you think some of the players that played for the Maple Leafs or any of the Canadian teams who were on the American team are going to be treated when they go back and start playing when games start back up this week? How do you think that's going to turn out?
Oh, you're saying the American hockey players?
The American hockey players who play on like the Maple Leafs or the Canucks.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, you mean by their fans?
Yes.
I don't think they're going to be booed. First of all, Canadians are too polite.
Well, I'll give you this. Well, I think it's almost a similar situation like what Morash was saying in that, you have these diehard fans, and we all know the teams from Canada, they are loyal. I mean, the Maple Leafs, the Montreal Canadiens. I'll tell you right now, as somebody who went to Ranger games with my dad for over 10 years, those fan bases travel in bunches. I mean, they could take over sections of visiting teams' arenas. But what I'm saying is, though, so I get what Marash is saying, but he's taken his fandom a little bit too far in that regard. This was not about Rangers versus Devils or Rangers versus Islanders or Penguins or Flyers, like in your own division. This is about country. I mean, that almost – I almost could see, like, Maple Leafs fans or Canucks fans or anybody who in Canada has an American hockey player who was on that USA team, and they go back to their own fan base and them being upset and going off on that kind of tweet rant or whatnot versus what Marash was doing.
You think that's more likely?
I think it's more likely. Now, I don't agree with it. I don't agree with what Marash was saying. I get what he's saying, but he's taking his fandom a little bit too far in that regard.
Well, first of all, there was the tweet he was responding. It was like, I've never loved Jack Hughes as much as I do right now. So he's basically saying, I don't really love Jack Hughes, but right now I really like him because he won for Team USA. Exactly. Like, that's the point that Chris Lepresti's making, even though he's a Ranger fan.
Oh, I look as somebody who's a Rangers fan too. I can tell you, I know Jack Hughes is a devil, but I don't think about that.
In the moment,
because it's about Team USA. It's not about Rangers versus Devils or whatnot.
Right.
And I also think Marash, too, to be fair, he's probably really, really just frustrated because of how the Rangers season has been, and that basically his GM, and I should say his GM because he's also my GM, but my GM's also, for the second time in a few years, has to put out a letter to the fan base about the season they're having and just admitting what they're going to have to do and basically had to sell off some pieces.
Right. And they also traded I mean, I don't really follow hockey very much. Yeah. The reason I don't follow hockey is honestly because I don't need to. I could do a podcast I could talk about hockey maybe once or twice a year on this podcast and totally be fine. It's not like football. I got to follow everything that happens.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just what being in the space does to you. You follow what you need to follow. But from what I understand, they traded their best player earlier this year, and they traded him to the Kings, right?
Correct.
What's his name? What was his name?
Well, I look. I mean, I get what you're saying.
I'm saying, what was the guy's name that they traded?
It's eluding me right now.
Okay.
I'll give it to you in 1 second. But yeah, I mean, the Rangers basically had another fire sale. That's what it really was.
Right. They're basically
Artemi Panarin, by the way, is
what's his name?
Artemi Panarin.
That's right, Panarin. They traded Panarin, and a lot of Ranger fans were like really mad about it. And that's when I learned a lot about NHL contracts, where everybody has like no trade clauses in NHL contracts. And I know the Rangers are just a disaster this year.
Yes.
I'm looking at the standings right now, and the Rangers are in last place in the Eastern Conference. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Well, yeah, I mean, but you have to also remember too, up until recently, the Rangers went about a 20-year stretch where they made the playoffs almost every year. I mean, there was 1 year where they missed the playoffs on the last day of the season, and then up until recently, they've been, as I said, they've been in the playoffs almost every year, and then they've struggled over the last couple of years, whether that's just poor play, injuries, or whatnot. But I mean, this team they went from, obviously winning the Stanley Cup in 1994 to having a very tough stretch from about 98 to 2004. Then the lockout happened, which ended up being the best thing for the franchise, if you could say that. And then post-lockout, 2005 to maybe, I'd say 3 years ago, they made the playoffs nearly every single year.
Yeah.
So but take that tweet for 1 second and think about this. So Mika Zibanejad, who's one of the better players on the Rangers this year, not an American, not on Team USA. If his country won the gold medal, would think about the outcry that would happen. And Marash would say, "I'm thrilled that he was more happy for Zibanejad winning a gold than Team USA."
But what country is he from?
I believe it's Sweden.
Okay.
It's who the U.S. played in the semifinal to make it to the gold medal game.
Okay, so he was really happy. So if he said he was happy about Zibanejad, well, I don't know if
he's
he
a
would have
Ranger. But see, that's putting your fandom over country, and that's you could go down a very bad hole doing that.
Yeah, and also it's just, I mean, it's hard for me to draw a parallel because I'm not a hockey fan, and there's no. I mean, I'm an Islander fan, but I'm not like a really big Islander fan, and there's no real parallel with hockey. And what I mean by that is, it's like no other international competition really matters that much besides the hockey one. Like in baseball, you have the World Baseball Classic, which I think I think the World Baseball Classic's a joke.
Oh,
because you have,
don't even get me started with that.
And here's my thing. I can't stand how in the World Baseball Classic, you don't need to be from that country or be a citizen of that country to represent them in the World Baseball Classic. Like, if your team can't get players from that country, like instead of getting Italian Americans, if you can't get actual Italians from Italy, maybe you shouldn't be in the World Baseball Classic. Why are you getting our American players not good enough to play for the American team to play for the Italian team? That's such a joke. Like get actual players from those countries to play in the World Baseball Classic. That's the whole point. You're not an Italian team if you just have a bunch of Americans with Italian last names. That's not an Italian team. You
made me think of something that we could have brought up during the show. The big deal with the World Baseball Classic, or one of the things that was brought up this past week, was that the ace of the Tigers, Tariq Skubal, said that he would go play for Team USA, but he'd only play in one game because he's trying to get both sides in that he wants to play for Team USA, but he's also more focused on the Tigers, or he's focused on the Tigers as well, which is what he should be because he's being paid by the Tigers. And that just speaks to the volumes of what is wrong with the World Baseball Classic. And, for anybody who's going to go out there and say, oh, now we get the World Baseball Classic, which is going to be just as fun as this. First of all, don't even think about trying to compare the World Baseball Classic to the Team USA winning the gold medal of the Olympics. This is not – the World Baseball Classic is not an Olympic event. There's no gold medal. It is what the World Baseball Classic is an enhanced exhibition tournament. There is nothing good about that. And you know what? If you want to say, well, what about all the other countries who are taking it all in? That's a different story because there are like Japan and the countries over there value baseball more than we do here in the U.S. I'm sorry.
But it's also different because they're smaller countries.
Well,
we're a big country and we're great at sports. Like there's a certain point where we're just not going to care that much about the World Baseball Classic.
Well, I don't like it. I'm not going to pay attention to it. I mean, I will because if we have to talk about it on the show, then I will. But I'm more going to be focused on March Madness. There's a time. One of the many problems with the World Baseball Classic is that there's no perfect time to play it. Now, there is. If you want to do something like that, what you just saw here in the Winter Olympics is what the World Baseball Classic could do, and that let them take a 2-week stretch in the summertime. But what that also should mean is there should be a debate, or they should be, and this is going to happen in 2028 in the Summer Olympics, is that they should be playing in the Summer Olympics. If these players want to play outside of it, because they're team first, not like this. This is different than the Olympics. And the timing of this is terrible because these players have to ramp up earlier in the year. It's not like any other sport because these players have to ramp up earlier in the year. There's a whole big process to that in baseball. And that means that they're putting themselves at greater risk to be injured. And if you're the number one goal for a player in the Major League Baseball is not to be the best team in the World Baseball Classic, it is to win the World Series. And if you go out there in an enhanced exhibition tournament and injure yourself and cost your team a chance at a World Series, I'm sorry, that's wrong. And if you think I'm crazy, ask Met fans how they felt when Edwin Diaz got hurt in the World Baseball Classic. Yeah, how did you feel when Edwin Diaz
during the celebration, no less?
He got hurt in the World Baseball Classic and hurt the Mets' chances, and the Mets were never the same team that year.
Yeah, and here's the thing:
you had no issue with that, with him playing in that?
I had a huge issue with it.
Okay.
And it wasn't just after he got injured. Like, I have an issue. I've always had an issue with the World Baseball Classic. I would be in favor of some players having provisions in their contracts or getting paid a lot of money that they can't play in the World Baseball Classic. Like, that's how I think it should be. Like, if you're getting maybe if you're getting X amount of money, the team also says, you can't play in the World Baseball Classic. We're just risking too much money. And I guess that's one thing that basketball got right a little bit, which is that players are like, we see with load management and everything with players like being a little more careful about like getting hurt and things like that. That's what the World Baseball Classic has been. It's just a way for players to potentially get hurt for really no reward.
Yeah, and also speaking of that, I don't want anybody else to try and tell me, well, what do you say about basketball players when they play in the Summer Olympics? That's ramping up early before the basketball season. It's the Olympics. It's the Olympics. You're playing for a gold medal. You're not playing. There's no gold medal. What thing is there in the World Baseball Classic that you're playing for? It's an enhanced exhibition tournament. There's nothing special about winning the darn.
You're not winning a gold medal.
Where's your gold medal? Where's the Olympics? Where's the ceremony that you get for the World Baseball Classic? Come on, don't compare. Do not compare the World Baseball Classic to the Summer Olympics. That's a disgrace. That's disgraceful to do something like that.
And also, in the Olympics, the roster is so deep, at least in the for the USA, that players don't need to they don't necessarily need to get a lot of minutes and rack up a lot of miles. Like, that just isn't really much of an issue with the NBA.
Yeah, and
with the Olympics and basketball,
and the one thing that the Winter Olympics does for the hockey players is it eliminates the All-Star break and the All-Star game. And as I said, the best All-Star game in any of the sports is going to be the sport that gets rid of it. Now, obviously, hockey's not getting rid of it, but they got rid of it for this. They got they did the Four Nations face-off, which was a phenomenal thing. So hockey's doing something right. Now, listen, they're never going to be as popular as anybody else, but remember, they also have. And say what you want. I know a lot of people can't stand Gary Bettman, but you know what, though? Gary Bettman, under his watch now, has hockey on Turner Sports nationally, has him back on ESPN nationally, and that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And here's baseball, who's having problems with their regional networks, who is more excited about these being on Peacock. The very first game of the season really is not on TV, and you don't have your ESPN package anymore. So ESPN's basically telling you that Major League Baseball is an afterthought. But so don't sell me the World Baseball Classic and stuff is better, is just as good as just as good as the Olympics, because it's not.
No, it never will be. And that's why when I was thinking about like Morash's tweet and thinking of a parallel, there really isn't one, because there's no baseball in the Olympics. So maybe if there was, the best example I could think of would be somebody like Tom Brady, but there's no international, because I always hated Tom Brady, but there's no international competition in football. And if there was, the USA would just kill everybody. It wouldn't even be worth watching or talking about. So I wouldn't even really care. Basketball, Team USA in the Olympics, okay, maybe that, but Team USA usually kills everybody. I'm not even really that worried about that. And I don't think there's any player I really hate that is going to be, or really dislike that is going to be in the Olympics. Maybe a Celtic, but I don't know. I don't hate any.
I put that behind me
No, I totally agree. I'm just trying to think of a parallel. And then I was thinking in baseball, it would be somebody like, it's an old example, but Chipper Jones, where I never liked Chipper Jones. I never liked Bryce Harper. But if they were playing on Team USA, I would be rooting for Team USA. But there is no parallel to this. Like in the World Baseball Classic, I don't really care that much, because especially when most of the other countries in the World Baseball Classic are just Americans anyway. It's like Team USA versus Team USA on different campuses. I almost don't even care about that. There's no real national pride in that when it's Americans playing other Americans.
I think the one other thing too with the Morash tweet, though, is it speaks volumes to what WFAN has become, though, because they have these guys that I think right now are just on the air and either on Twitter or on the air just for tweet bait.
Yeah,
unfortunately, there's a lot of those guys. The days of, obviously we're long past Mike and the Mad Dog or Benigno and Roberts or Steve Summers at night. Those days are long, long behind us. My childhood on sports radio is done. And there's nothing left. Boomer and Geo is the last thing left really on FAN that's original, if you want to say that. But
it's not even original. I think it's very similar to. I think Boomer and Carton was very similar. I think Mike and the Mad Dog is very similar, which is why they rank so highly in terms of like how a GOAT status for sports radio shows.
Well,
because Mike and the Mad Dog was the first like 2-person show where they really like talked like your average fan in a way and like argued back and forth. Like Mike and the Mad Dog was the first of its kind, and Boomer and Carton was the first of its kind. Boomer and Geo is very similar to Boomer and Carton.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, the only difference is though you don't have as much, controversial drama as you did with Carton. But
there wasn't even that much controversial stuff with Carton. There were a few things that I can think of, although one of them definitely involved Boomer and not Carton.
But but like you were saying though, like Mike, there won't be another Mike and the Mad Dog, and Mike and the Mad Dog will go down as one of the most influential shows in sports history because if you remember, they were one of the first shows to be simulcast on TV. So I mean, I know Imus in the Morning was, but it wasn't a sports show. But Mike and Dog were the first. I believe they were the very first sports radio show to be simulcast on TV, and they did it for 5.5 hours a day. You don't have these shows that go 5.5 hours every single day.
I think that's too long.
At the time, though, it was worth it. If you look at today's day and age, if you told somebody you'd be on the air for 5.5 hours, it'd be way too long. Even overnight, the overnight shows aren't that long anymore. They used to be that long back in the day.
The problem with the overnight shows is that they're so desperate for calls. Like they put you on in 2 seconds.
And you have a little bit more leeway when you're.
You have a lot of leeway. They let you go on for a long time.
And there's no Tony Page either.
It's killing them because they have to fill time, which I think is bad for a radio show in terms of its content. If you're desperate to fill time, and you got to take calls from Bob and Ronkonkoma going on and on about how long he's been a Yankee fan.
Well, it's why also, and I know this because I get up early in the morning for work for my main job, and that sometimes at the second to last or the last hour, the last half hour of the show, they will just start like they would at the very top of their show and just start from the beginning and just recap what the big part of your show was about.
Yeah, and I mean, you can do that in radio because nobody's really listening for all, say, 4 hours of your show, like unless you're going on a road trip or something like that. I guess that's the advantage of podcast. You don't have to it's almost like in radio, you have to do a podcast 4 times or however many hours that you're doing the show because it's not really the same people. Like if you're doing a show from 6 to 10, the people listening at 6 are not the same people listening at 9:30. So you can kind of rehash some of that stuff. And if you're doing it by yourself, on overnights, it's how many words do you actually have to say?
That's true. You're right.
But yeah, Sean Morash, he's always been a little bit of a dramatic fan. He's always been a huge drama queen with everything. I don't know if you remember this, but when he was the producer of the DA show.
Oh, yeah, that was the best.
He cried when Derek Jeter retired.
Oh, I remember. Listen, DA, that, by the way, there won't be another DA show ever anymore either. And I miss him a lot on what was CBS Sports Radio. I mean, I know he's on Sirius, but I don't get Sirius, so.
I thought that was very funny.
I remember quite well. Those were the good old days. I mean, he actually had a segment they used to do called Canadian Bacon, and they brought that back on his Watch DA show on YouTube, and it actually brought back some good times. But yeah, I mean, there's some things about Morash I like. I think he does get a little bit too dramatic and overboard, and I think this tweet really was to say that because I mean, if you were to basically root for Mika Zibanejad because he's a Ranger and they played Team USA and they beat them in the gold medal game. I mean, the outcries he could spend his 4-hour show with, I think he's with Evan and
Tiki.
Yeah. He could spend the whole 4-hour show just on that one tweet alone. And you know what? Look, if he gets you through a show or two, maybe he did his job.
Right. Maybe it's not so bad if it
especially
gets you
when you're trying to fill something in February.
I think that if he had tweeted something similar, what if he had said something what if the USA hadn't been in the final and Zibanejad Sweden had won and he had tweeted he was happy for him as a Ranger fan, I think that would be a little different.
It's not even close to the same thing, and that would be understandable because at that point, if Team USA is not in the gold medal game, then yeah, maybe you do root for a player on your team more than the country. Absolutely. Like I can almost see like if it was, let's say, Sweden versus Canada, and Canada's got Sidney Crosby, and a lot of Ranger fans and really a lot of hockey fans don't like Sidney Crosby, so that almost is a little bit more understandable. But to basically try and root to not be to go after somebody because he said he's so excited that Jack Hughes won the gold medal game. I mean, again, you're putting fandom over country, and that's not what this was about.
Well, I mean, my issue is, it's like, if he hadn't said, like, I'm not saying he's obligated to, like, as a Ranger fan, to like gush over Jack Hughes or anything like that. It's more that like you're mad at another Ranger fan for being happy that Team USA won. And the truth is, the only reason they don't like Jack Hughes is because they're Ranger fans. They don't really dislike Jack Hughes. He just plays for the wrong team. It's the same reason I don't like Tom Brady. If Tom Brady played for the Jets, I'd love him. So I at least understand that. It's not really about the individual. It's really just about your fandom. Like, I don't really root against individual players because, like, I don't root against individual players because it really only has to do with my own team. That's the only reason why. Like, I mean, just to think of an example, I guess one player I never liked would have been maybe somebody like Bryce Harper or something like that. But if Bryce Harper, like, I don't know, played for the Kansas City Royals or whatever, I wouldn't care.
Well, I mean, even it's like, the Yankee fans couldn't stand Johnny Damon when he was a Red Sox, and then the Yanks signed him back in 2007, and everybody loved him. So
yeah, exactly.
And now, ever since he's retired, now everybody loves him. So
yeah, exactly.
That's what it is. By the way, I just want to say one more quick thing about this Team USA win, because there was one. There's actually two more things real quick. Number one, Kenny Albert's call of this was absolutely amazing, and Albert, Eddie Olczyk, and the crew there for NBC did an unbelievable job. And I got to tell you, like, Kenny Albert's incredible. I mean, he's gotten so much praise, but think about, is there anybody who's more versatile than him? I mean,
yeah, he does everything. Well, he's really good at hockey. He's good at football. Does he do baseball?
He does baseball for Fox in the summertime. Yeah. So he'll do that. And then he's for basketball for the Knicks. But I mean, and also, I mean, his itinerary in the last calendar year, remember, he called 2 international games in football this past season, then goes to Italy for 2 weeks for this. I mean, I said, somebody asked me, because they know when we do the football show and I call out the crews before the games, they asked me, who's like your favorite guy? And I love everybody. I mean, look, I love there's no bad announcer, sideline, color commentator, sideline reporter. I love them all. But like, my role model and somebody like that is Kenny Albert, because he's the kind of guy that I want to be, who could call any sport at any given time. And I noticed that, and this show will come out beforehand, but the NHL comes back to TNT it came back on Wednesday, and he's going out to LA to do the Kings game. And I'm like, so you're going from Italy now out to LA, which is, I believe, like an 11-hour flight out there, and then he'll come back and obviously still do Rangers local hockey, and he'll do stuff at the Stanley Cup Finals.
Talk about the jet lag.
You know what? You got to be in top-notch shape to do the amount of travel that he's done. I mean, let's put it this way. I've been on one flight in the last 7 years, and he is taking multiple flights a week. It is just amazing.
I'm sure his flying experience is a little more pleasant than ours. If you want to talk about like classes, I mean, planes are really big. I mean, the wealthier you are, the more pleasant your flying experience is.
I'm sure they're taking care of him. But I mean, just an unbelievable. I mean, great calls on the men and the women, who both won gold in dramatic fashion there in Milan. And also a very emotional moment too. Johnny Gaudreau, the jersey that the Team USA was waving around. I think he had some relatives in the stands in that game, and obviously he was a big part of Team USA. That tragically lost his life way too early in a drunk driving crash back in 24. Just a very emotional scene there.
He was American, right?
Yes. Yeah, he was part of Team USA. You saw the jersey that they were waving around when they got the gold and going around the ice. That was a very, very emotional moment. But an amazing Winter Olympics for Team USA, not only in hockey but across the board. Obviously, I mentioned at the start of the show, the other big story with this, I believe, was Lindsey Vonn. What happened with her? She's back home, obviously facing a very lengthy rehab. But fortunately, though, it was very scary. She was talking about how almost she had her leg amputated because of what had happened. Suffering the torn ACL, and then still racing, and then she crashes, and that looked really, really scary, and has to get off the ER, emergency surgeries and stuff. And she was facing numerous ones, and I think she's still got more to go. So obviously, we think of her as this happens, but very successful Winter Olympics for Team USA, and now on to LA in 2028.
I guess we won't. Wow, I can't believe. Yeah, it's gonna. Yeah, that's crazy. It's gonna be here. Now we're not gonna be able to watch curling again for another 4 years.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could watch if you really wanted to search for it. You could watch the World Championships every year. I think I've watched enough of it though to last until 2030.
I mean, the thing with curling is that we only watch it because it's on the Olympics, and we don't normally watch it. That's the only reason people watch it. And it's just sort of fascinating that a sport that involves cleaning, what looks like cleaning, is an Olympic sport. And everybody, I think the reason people like curling is because we all think that, like, well, if I trained to become a curler when I was in high school, I could be in the Olympics right now. That's what everybody thinks. And you have good reason to believe it, because how many people have ever tried curling? It's not like basketball. Like, I could never make the NBA because, I played basketball. Everybody played basketball. But
those stones are heavy. I did some research about that because I was with a group of people. We were watching it on one of the TVs. And I went and looked at it. Those stones are very, very heavy. So it's not like, it's a very simple thing, and then you got to sweep and stuff like that. But look, I always say this, like, the one thing with the Winter and the Summer Olympics is I always watch the different sports. Like, I don't watch the main ones like figure skating.
Yeah.
I'll watch the bobsled and the curling, and the Summer Olympics. I'll watch like the water polo and all the other unique sports. I mean, the Summer Olympics has a little bit more variety because it's not just on ice or snow. It's in water, on track and field and all that stuff. So I'll watch the different ones, the most unique ones. And now we'll get ready for LA in 28 and then the Winter in 2030.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I would rather watch. Yeah, I totally agree. I'd rather watch like the sports I don't normally watch. The only things I don't like watching in the Olympics are like marathon running, because that to me is just so boring. Like, I'm just watching everybody run around in circles. That to me, I'm not really a fan of. But like in the Summer Olympics, for instance, I don't really like watching the basketball, but because I watch basketball all the time anyway.
Well, yeah, and you have to remember, like in the Winter Olympics, you're just coming off the Super Bowl. So you needed something. Oh, and Mike Tirico, too, is another guy, by the way, I should have given a lot of praise to go from calling the Super Bowl to flying out to Italy and doing that. But, I mean, you just come off the Super Bowl. You need something to keep yourself entertained until you get really till now when college basketball, I think, starts becoming very, very important. We had just a weekend where we had the top 4 teams playing each other on Saturday. So it's still too early for that regard. But now you start paying the college basketball a little bit more. Conference championships are coming up really soon, and then we'll have March Madness in about 3 weeks. And I'll tell you, I mean, this year's gonna be a blur. I mean, next week is March.
Yeah,
but you need something to pass the time, and to distract yourself after the Super Bowl, because otherwise there's not much else on. So,
well, the thing with we have March Madness, and by the way, college basketball this year it's been a phenomenal season. There really are some great teams in college basketball this year. I don't normally follow college basketball a ton during the regular season. I've actually been quoted as saying it's a snooze fest.
Well, it doesn't. If you think about it, though, it really doesn't matter up until about this time when you start.
It doesn't exactly. It doesn't. But this year, it's actually been really good. And there's some really great players on some really good teams. I saw Michigan just got their second loss against Duke.
Yeah, Duke played a great defensive game Saturday. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to March Madness. I just don't know how much I can really so far contribute to the conversation.
You really don't have to get into it until about now. I mean, because the top teams will still play each other. The other big storyline really right now is Miami of Ohio being undefeated, and everybody, and there are people talking about that if they get 1 or 2 losses, they may not even make the tournament, which I think is absolutely crazy when you have 68 teams that make it, and you're telling me that the way they're playing right now, and even if they suffer 2 losses, that they're not going to get in. I think that's absolutely wild. But now is the time where you start getting into it and study up for 3 weeks before conference championships, and then Selection Sunday there on March 15th.
Yeah, I mean, the SEC this year is not quite the powerhouse that it was last year. Like most SEC teams last year ended up making the tournament. Now there's only 4 that are ranked. Yeah. So it's gone back down to what we expected, what we're used to them being. I mean, for a little while, I mean, not so much this year, but for a little while, Alabama's basketball team was better than their football team.
You're right. Yeah. And it's very rare that you actually have the same school good in both football and basketball. It's few and far between. You're right.
I mean, maybe Michigan, you can say, but right now Michigan's a better basketball school than they are a football school. Although they're not really a bad football school.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State, you want to say not, I mean, maybe, but I mean, there's not that many for sure.
I mean, right now, I wouldn't say Ohio State. Where's Ohio State ranked?
No, but what I'm saying in general, I'm talking about because but with teams like Miami, or Indiana, Indiana, who just came off winning the national championship in college football. I mean, what are they in basketball, really? So that's what I'm saying. Like it's hard to. I mean, you're more likely that you have the best. You have men's and women's basketball teams being good versus the men's basketball and football team being good.
Yeah, that doesn't normally happen. Maybe for a few years. I mean, it's happened, but it's never been sustainable. It's always usually been for like a short period of time. So we have Alabama. Another example, UCLA was a good football team and basketball team for maybe 1 or 2 years. I don't remember USC ever fitting that description. Like I said, Michigan. Some years Michigan State. Michigan State is a pretty consistently good basketball team and an inconsistently good football team. Although they've been really bad for the past 5 or 10 years. And there's not many examples. There's not many. Maybe, I mean, in 2015, UNC was actually a good football team. But there's not many. There's not many.
Well, just think about, I mean, here's something to just keep in mind. The only 3 teams, the only 3 schools to win both a football national championship and a men's college basketball national championship. There's only 3. I'm sorry. So Florida is the only school to win both a football national championship and a men's basketball national championship in the same academic year, and that was back in 2006.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's not that easy to do. I mean, obviously, when you think men's and women's, UConn is the first one that comes to mind. It comes to mind, but but it's not that easy to do because they're 2 totally different ways to win a championship in those 2 sports.
Yeah, no. The weird thing about college the weird thing about the sport of basketball, and my theory is that the NBA players have gotten too good for they're too good for the sport. Like, for instance, everybody can shoot threes, and a lot of people say, like, that's bad for the sport because everybody's shooting threes. Like, that's, like, in a weird way, like, that almost became an issue. And in college basketball, it's the opposite. Part of what makes, not all of it, but part of what makes college basketball so great is that the quality is just not good, if that makes sense. Like, people love upsets, and here's the thing with upsets in college basketball. The fact that upsets are so common in college basketball, or seem so common, I think it says more about the blue blood teams than it does about the mid-majors. It's not because the mid-major teams are really good. It's because the blue blood teams really aren't that good, because there's not a lot of talent in college basketball because the best players are incentivized to leave after 1 year. That's part of the reason why in football there's so much bigger of a gap, because the best players stay for 3 or 4 years mostly.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
All right, can we talk about the Knicks? They can't get past the Pistons, the bad boy Pistons.
Yeah.
I mean, these aren't the bad boy Pistons, but they can't get past the Pistons. Everybody's freaking out about it. And the way I see it is that, look, if the Knicks are going to be losing, they're losing to the right teams. Like, I'd be a lot more frustrated if they were losing to, like, the Wizards or something like that, or losing to the bad teams. But the Pistons have beaten the Knicks 3 times this year. The Pistons are at the top of the Eastern Conference and are, you can say, the best team in the NBA right now. I mean, they're playing Oklahoma City tomorrow. I mean, by the time the show airs, that game will have already happened. But they play Oklahoma City, and they're actually favored by 5.5 points. So they look like they're a hotter team than Oklahoma City right now. And the Knicks, they can't quite get past, like, they just can't beat them. Like, 3 times in the regular season they played, they couldn't beat them. And here's the thing with the Knicks. The Knicks have very high expectations. They almost remind me a little bit of the Bills. Like, everybody was saying this year, I mean, how, like, well, the Celtics, they're an injured team. And the Pacers, they're injured. The 2 teams that were kind of in their way in the past, the Knicks don't have anymore. And now they're not even in first place in the conference. I feel like if they don't make the NBA Finals this year, it's a disappointment. And they're the only team that really fits that description. Even if Oklahoma City doesn't make the finals or the Spurs, it's not that big of a disappointment. To me, if the Knicks don't make the finals this year, especially after making the head coaching change, yeah, it's a disappointment. I mean, the Pistons were the 6th seed in the East last season, I think. And they just jumped you. And now they're the best team in the conference. That is a disappointment to me. Now, it might say more about the Pistons than it does about the Knicks, but it's like, I think it's always bad when a team that was, what were they, 3 spots behind us last year I mean, I could be mistaken. I might be misremembering. If they just jump you that quickly, that always is a bad look for the team.
Well, I think that's a very good comparison, by the way, referencing the Bills.
Yeah.
Because when you make the conference finals last year and then you don't bring back Tom Thibodeau, then that already you're basically saying is whoever the next head coach is going to be, in this case Mike Brown, is you're basically telling him, listen, you need to at the bare minimum, you got to make the conference finals. And and before the season started, you were looking at an Eastern Conference that the Boston Celtics, without their star player Jason Tatum, the Indiana Pacers, who were, like you said, in the Knicks' way last year, missing a couple of key players, Halliburton and others, and they have been banged up all year. But the thing with the Pistons is that they're still a very, very young team. So yeah, they're getting through the regular season with ease. They're taking care of the Knicks in the regular season. But when you make the playoffs, it's a different animal. And you know what? There's 2 things in the NBA that are very, very important, in my opinion, when you make the playoffs. And that's experience and home court advantage. And really, maybe you can almost say more so experience more than home court advantage, because we've seen, even in recent years, we've seen some of the the lower teams winning series. I think the Knicks are going to be fine. You have to remember, after they lose the game to the Pistons, then they come back in dramatic fashion against the Rockets. I think it was the Rockets. They were down 18 in the 4th quarter Saturday night, and they rallied to win that game. And my thought process when I got home Saturday night and I saw that was, well, see, this is the kind of game that can propel the Knicks, and it can also prove why the Knicks can make the conference finals and beyond. And, they have experience because they've been down this road before. I think the most important thing with the Knicks, and we've seen this in recent years, is going to be health, because I think you need a full rotation. It's one of the problems that they had under Tom Thibodeau. Thibodeau would not play a deep rotation. He would only play 7 or 8 guys. I think the stars got worn out because of that. I think if you're healthy and you could play 9 or 10 deep and maybe give Brunson a few extra minutes off, if you can afford that, that's going to go to tremendous lengths, in my opinion. So I think the experience is a big, big thing. And I say that because if the Knicks and the Pistons do match up in, let's say, the conference finals, the Knicks do have the experience. And what will the Pistons I mean, it's a young team there. They got a lot of good young stars in that team. I'm not taking anything away from them, but it's one thing to do it in the regular season. It's another thing too when by the time you make the conference finals, you're talking about playing, 90 to 95 games and an entirely different level of basketball in that round. And that's something the Knicks have been through before in the last couple of years. So they know what it takes. They know what's going to be talked about. Mike Brown has experience too at the coaching position too. So that I think is why I throw away. Look, like you said, they're losing to the Pistons are one of the best teams in the league. It's not like the Knicks are doing this against some crappy opponents. They're doing this to a true, legitimate, a great young team. Well, let's see what happens when experience happens in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. There's a lot of, I think in the NBA, there's a really big, that's when you see the biggest difference between the regular season and the postseason. And a lot of it is because the games are called differently. It takes a different type of, like, even if you just look at the players, different types of players fit the regular season and postseason better than others. Like a player like I think that being a really good defensive player that has a good mid-range game, for instance, is a much better fit for the playoffs than say like a team or a player that, shoots a lot of threes and, can run up and down the court very quickly, things like that, because the game is more physical and you don't have as many opportunities. Like a good example would be like the Golden State Warriors in 2016. They won 72 regular season games or 73, whatever it was. And they couldn't beat the Cavs in the final. They lost to the Cavs in the finals, and the Oklahoma City took them to 7 games. Like they were the best team by far in the regular season, but in the postseason, they were not the best team, and they weren't even clearly a better team than Oklahoma City that year. So sometimes I think the playoffs can be a little bit of an equalizer. I mean, if you look at another example I think of is the Hawks in 2015, where they were the number 1 seed, but they weren't good in the playoffs at all. I mean, it took them 6 games to beat the Nets. They were lucky to beat the Wizards because John Wall got hurt, and then they lost to the Cavs. I think it was in 5 games, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So that happens a lot in basketball. But with the Pistons, I don't know. Here's one thing that worries me about the Pistons, though. Last year, when they were a year younger, which I think makes a very big difference, they gave the Knicks a run for their money. I know we forget about it because we think of the Knicks losing to the Pacers and beating the Celtics, but that was a really close series. And even though we won in 6 games, that series could have gone way different if a few things don't happen. And I never really blamed Thibodeau for not playing a deep roster because the Knicks didn't really have a deep roster when Thibodeau was coaching. This year they made it a little deeper, but most of the time Thibodeau, he just didn't really have that deep of a roster. He played them when he needed to, but I didn't think the roster was really all that deep. And that's the reason why. And I also just don't think the Knicks really have a championship caliber roster. I mean, I'm not saying they can't win, but I don't look at this roster and think, oh, they're going to win a championship. If they play like they did last year in the playoffs, the Knicks will not go to the finals. If Cat and Brunson get into all this stupid foul trouble like they did last year, which they can clean up, but if they do, they're not going to the finals. And one of the issues, or if Miles Bridges has these cold streaks like he did last year, they're not going to the finals. So I have no reason to believe that this Knicks team will go to the finals. I just don't think they will.
Well, but I know all the pressure is going to be on you have to make the finals. I think bare minimum the conference final is a must this year. I think you have to get there, and it may almost be also what happens when they get there. How do they get there? What's the state of the roster when they get there, health-wise and stuff. So, I mean, but this team, Jalen Brunson on this team, though, always gives them a chance to get there. That's why. I mean, he's a bona fide star. I mean, he will go down. I mean, he could tear his ACL and never play for the Knicks again, and he will be one of the best additions that this team has ever made in their franchise history because of how valuable he's been to this team from where they were until they got him and how they've taken off since then. I mean, they're based. I mean, look, they're competitive. They are a dangerous team almost year in and year out with him. I mean, they're a threat. I mean, they haven't been like that in forever.
Yeah, and I lived through the 17-win Knicks teams. Like,
you and me both.
Like
I mean,
that 1 year.
Nick D, I said this, that up until recently, the Knicks were arguably the worst team in sports. And the four major sports, the only team you could have made a case that could have been worse than the Knicks in that stretch was the Cleveland Browns.
Jets.
Well, the Jets at least, though, made 2 AFC championships in that time.
That's true.
So, I mean, they at least did that. The Knicks were winning 15, 17 games a year. They were losing games by 30 to 40 points. I mean, like you said, the 17-win teams, the years where I'm watching the images of Stephon Marbury with the towel over his head. God, I don't even want to go through this because I'm going to get sick. I know you just got over being sick. I'm going to get you sick again. So I don't want to go through those days. I want to focus on the here and now. I was sick for about 2 weeks in January, so I don't want to go back down that road again. But there was a good stretch that they were literally the worst team in sports, and because of their production on the field, or on the court, all this stuff off the court with Dolan being, I'm not going to mince words, an asshole. The Isaiah Thomas situation. So I mean, what that's happened, and there's no coincidence that Dolan steps away from the team and doesn't have as much say over the team and takes a step back, and the team has been great the last several years.
Yeah, he did the same thing. Going back to the Rangers, the same exact thing happened with the Rangers.
Absolutely, it did. You're right. I mean, he took a step back from the Rangers. The lockout back in 04 and 05 was, and I say this again, that was the best thing that ever happened to the organization. So, look, I mean, it does take a while, but sometimes you have to go through the pain to experience the joy. It's one of the best song lyrics that I actually live my life by because it's so true. But we're talking about. I mean, look, now we're talking. Think about how the fact that we've gone from that to the point now where if the Knicks don't make the Eastern Conference Finals, we think it's a disappointing year.
I think that's pretty good perspective, I would say.
Yeah, and you know what? If we get knocked out, if we make the playoffs and get knocked down in the second round this year, then you know what? Wow. Okay, I'm disappointed because we didn't make this because we got out in the second rounds. Yeah, it'll sting, but the long-term perspective of where we were to now is amazing. I mean, you can almost do a 30,
or even just where we were. Or even, I mean, look, if you think about it, I think Brunson has to be on the Mount Rushmore of Knicks of all time. I mean, if you think about it, other than Walt Frazier, Ewing, and then I would have to say Brunson is right up there behind those two guys. Other than those two, I can't think of anybody else that would put above Brunson.
Well, okay. See, I'm not going to go to that extreme. Maybe in our lifetimes, yes, but not in franchise history. I mean, he has to win a championship before we can put him on the Mount Rushmore.
Well, Patrick Ewing hasn't won a championship either. The only one who's won a championship is Frazier.
But he also has a lot of the franchise records, and he played, 15 plus years. I mean, now how it ended was disgusting. It made me sick how it ended. But I mean, look, Brunson's got to win the Knicks, at least get the Knicks to an NBA Finals or a championship. Ewing had 2 finals. I know he got hurt for the 99 one. He should have won in 94. It was a disgrace because the Knicks didn't get him a second star. Brunson's at least got also some support, better. In some ways, Brunson's almost got a better supporting cast than Ewing. I think Ewing was a better player than Brunson, but Brunson's got a better supporting cast.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'd put him ahead of Ewing. I'm just saying I'd put him behind those two.
You could put him on the Mount Rushmore if they win a championship with him. Yeah, no, that's fair. I don't think he's there right now. I mean, I'd say right now he's a top 10 Knick. That's not a reach to say. I think, look, of the 4 teams that I root for, being the Yankees, the Giants, the Rangers, and the Knicks, the Jalen Brunson signing was one of the top 5 in my lifetime in 35 years on this planet because of the value that from where this team was into now what he's taken this team to. I mean, and the interesting thing will be is he's up for a max. I believe he's up for a max contract at the end of the year. And I'll tell you right now, I mean, I know you could put yourself in salary cap hell though, but he's almost worth every single dollar. So
yeah, and
just something to keep in mind. But we'll see how this transpires if these two do meet again in the playoffs.
The crazy thing is I didn't even like the Brunson signing when it happened. I thought it was too much money. And oh my God, I've never been more wrong about something before.
And remember, when it happened, there was always the talk about the tampering thing because of Rick Brunson, being on the Knicks coaching staff and Jalen and stuff. So remember that drama. Yeah, I was a bit hesitant about it at first, and look what's happened since then. It's the best thing that's ever happened. One of the best things that's ever happened to this organization.
Yeah, it really was. And like, I remember, like, that's interesting because his dad because Pablo Torre brought this up, and he's really big on like, all like finding everything out and finding dirt on teams like he did with the Clippers, and like the whole like the thing with Kawhi with the fake tree company or whatever it was, like it was so ridiculous. But I mean, that is an interesting question because Rick Brunson, his dad being on the coaching staff, is a little suspicious because I'm not accusing them of anything, but the opportunity is so obvious where since that coaches' salaries are not public, at least not assistant coaches, you never know what they're paying effectively Brunson through his dad. You never really know that.
Yeah. No, you're right.
I mean, so they could like skirt salary cap rules. You never really know how much
they pick and choose what
that could happen.
Yeah,
but no, I always thought that was kind of interesting. I hope Pablo Torre doesn't do any investigative reporting on that.
Be a 30 for 30 there too. Yeah.
I kind of hope he leaves us alone.
Yes.
On that. I mean, I think there's going to be a 30 for 30 about the Nova Knicks. That's going to be a thing. Sure.
Yeah, if only they were able to do something with that group, that would have been really, really special.
I mean, if we were to win a championship, but I have a feeling it's going to go the same way as like the 90s Knicks. It's like, oh, this great team that could just never win. That's what I think will happen.
Well,
but I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah. Well, 94 they should have won. 99 was special.
But yeah, I don't remember any of that. So
I can tell you.
Well, you were 4 years old in 94.
Well, it was the first, as I said, it was the first bit of sports that I ever got into. I was so spoiled. The first bit of sports I got into was the 94 Stanley Cup Finals and the 94 NBA Finals. And it took a while to get back to that again. So,
yeah, I mean,
I thought I was going to have a great sports career. First two things I ever watched were two teams. My first two teams I ever watched were both in the championship round.
Well, you're a Yankee and Giant fan. You've seen the Yankees win in 2009.
I have seen. Well, I saw 96, 98, 99, 2000. They made the World Series in 01, which was I would have traded almost one or two of those for the 01 win. 03 was kind of miraculous. They made it that year. Yes, in 09, and then obviously last 2 years ago. But I mean, they are. That's. They're that team that always wins 90 to 100 games every year, and just sometimes can't get over the hump.
Yeah.
But, yeah. I'd rather be that than, where the Knicks were for 20 years or so.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. That's our show this week. We'll be back next week. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. See you guys on whenever, next week.
We'll see you next month. We'll see you in March.
Technically, yeah.
Good night, everybody.